Bonjour everyone and welcome back to the Waves of Your Soul. Today we're going to be having a look at the Oracle of Mythic Heroes. This is a Greek mythology and astrology inspired oracle deck. It's by Letao Wang, illustrated by Rosang Zouali and Enjun Guo. And I'm super excited to be presenting this deck to you. I've been sent this for review by the creator, so a huge thank you to Letao for sending this my way. And I've been using it for over a month now. I really wanted to work with this for at least a month in order to give you my full impression, in order to tell you how I've been incorporating this deck into my tarot reading practice and all of that good stuff. So we're gonna be looking at all the cards, the guidebook. Before I get into it, if you're new here, hi, my name is Marine, I'm a French tarot reader. Well, I love reading the cards and I love talking about them, so if you'd like to see any more of that, make sure to subscribe. In the description box, you're gonna find where to purchase this deck. You'll also find all of my other social media links. So without further ado, let's get into looking at the Oracle of the Mythic Heroes. Of course, I had to use my beautiful Zodiac cloth for this deck because, after all, it is inspired not just by Greek mythology but also astrology. So, the Oracle of Mythic Heroes, and I absolutely love Greek mythology. It's a subject I'm very passionate about. So, when the creator Letao got in touch and asked if I wanted to check out his deck, it was a no-brainer for me. I was very excited to get into it because I love the theme of Greek mythology. And what truly made this deck stand out for me was the idea of mixing Greek mythology with astrology. This is a mass market deck, so you can purchase it on Amazon, your local bookshop, wherever you guys purchase your decks. It's a two-piece box with a thumb cutout. So the cards come in here, which is great. It means they're not shuffling about. As you can see, mine traveled for far away, so the box got a little bit up, but the cards were perfectly protected in their little space, and so that was great. It meant that none of my cards were damaged. The cards look like this. The backings are black with some constellation. You can see my camera a little bit because this is a little bit of a glossy cardstock. And on the front, you will have the full image, you will have the name of the hero or heroine, you will have the astrological sign, and you will have a keyword. And then as part of this deck, we also have an amazing guidebook, which truly is what this deck is all about for me. I love the artwork, I love the card, but the guidebook completely charmed me. And it's honestly one of the best oracle guidebooks I've read this year so far. And I've read quite a few because you know I read all the guidebooks of my decks. This is fantastic and we're gonna get into it. So the Oracle as Mythic Heroes, as the name suggests, is inspired by Greek mythology, but where it is very different from other Greek mythology decks. And as a big Greek mythology lover, I've got quite a few of them. This definitely stands out because instead of having gods and goddesses, here we're talking about heroes and heroines, which, by the way, I'm a French speaker. I never know how to pronounce H's in front of English words, so please forgive me if I forget to say any H's for heroes, heroines. These are the kind of words I always struggle saying. So what I want to do is we're going to be looking at all the cards. I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts, and then we're going to be looking at the guidebook in detail because, like I said, it's truly fantastic. We'll pull a card and we'll read what the guidebook has to say. But first, let me share with you the artwork. We'll walk through it and I'll explain to you how I've been working with this deck. So on each of the cards, as you can see, you will have a representation of the different heroes or heroines. And here we're not talking about gods or goddesses, much like a lot of the other decks that exist around Greek mythology. They're usually based around gods and goddesses. The choice of the creator was to focus more on the mortals and humans who stood out in the Greek mythology text for their different feats. So we're talking here about humans, about mortals who had exceptional life. And the fact that they are humans, I think, make them so much more relatable, and I found that it really helped me connect with the deck more because I felt closer to them. They're humans, right? So they make mistakes, they have shortcomings and failures. And of course, the guidebook explains the myths, it explains to you who they are, it explains to you a little bit about their life and their story. And when you read them, you really understand that these were just normal people living extraordinary life, and that helps to apply to us as human beings and to think, okay, in what ways can I potentially find the hero or the heroine within myself. So I really liked to see this particular aspect for the Greek mythology inspiration. Another huge, obviously, inspiration of this deck is the astrological aspect. The creator, Letao, I believe, is a trained astrologer, so that's where his expertise is originally from. And you can see on each of the cards, you don't just have the hero or heroine, you also have the zodiac sign. And that's because each card is not just linked to a zodiac sign, but also to a decan. So for each of the signs, each of the 12 signs, you have 3 different cards. And right now this deck is mixed in because that's how I've been using it, and I wanted to show with you how it looks like mixed. But I did pull out the 3 different Taurus cards just so that you could see what it looks like. So for example, here we have the first Taurus card. It's linked to sensuality. The second for Taurus is linked to greed with Midas, who could touch everything and turn it to gold. And then the last Taurus card with Asclepius is talent. So you could see we had 3 Taurus, and the keywords we had sensuality and talent, which I think are either more neutral slash a little bit more potentially positive. Depends how you read them, obviously. And then one more shadow aspect here with greed. And if you look at the guidebook, you will see that it's the same thing for every single sign. So for example, for Aries, we have leadership and confidence, which are more neutral or positive, and then impatience, which is maybe one of the more shadow sides of Aries. And that's the case for all the signs, so from Aries all the way to Pisces. So that's the way that the deck is created for each of the signs. 3 different cards, 3 different heroes, 3 different keywords, and this actually follows the decan, which we'll talk about when I look at the guidebook. You have an additional 4 cards for each of the 4 lunar cycle, which are, instead of heroes, they are mythical creatures, and we'll look at them at the end. But for now, let's look at the cards. So as you can see, the artwork is very colorful, very enchanting. I love the colors. I love that they have chosen to depict the heroes or heroines in different habitats, different landscapes, and usually just by the image, you kind of understand their strengths or you understand their story. So for example, here with Orpheus, we understand that he was a musician, that he was a lyricist, that he was a poet. The backgrounds are very beautiful, very soothing. And so you automatically get the idea a little bit, even if you're not familiar with who this is, as to potentially what their character stands for. And so I thought the artwork already is very expressive. Here for Theseus, you can see this is the epitome of the strong Greek hero. It's the warrior, it's the fighter. I mean, it's linked to Aries here with leadership. So very engaging, very bright, and very like intuitive artwork. So for the heroes or heroines that I was potentially not as familiar with, then it was really great to be able to rely on the artwork to understand or to refresh my memory about who they were. For example, for Bellerophon, we straight away see that there's a Pegasus and that it looks like a warrior. So it really helps you, the artwork, to kind of already divine some information here. I love also the addition of astrology. I personally am not someone who follows the decan, but I love working with zodiac signs, especially for my reading. If I'm reading for someone, then it can, for example, if they're seeing their own sign. For example, this month I was pulling a card from a friend, and she's a Taurus, and she had the question about her career, and she got the Asclepius card, which is linked to Taurus in this deck, and which is the keyword talent. I think we've looked at it when I was sharing with you the Taurus card. And so the fact that she was a Taurus and that she got a Taurus card, it was a nice confirmation. It just made her feel closer to that character. So I really like this addition of working with the zodiac signs. And like I said, I'm not someone who necessarily follows the decan. I've tried to do the decan walk and I failed many times. I usually fail around Cancer time. I'm just not someone who's very good at doing something for a whole year. I very much admire people who are able to do that. That's not the way I necessarily engage with astrology in my reading. I still found a lot of depth using this, not with the decans, but with the zodiac sign aspect. As for example, someone who loves also journaling, I loved pulling a card here and seeing, okay, which is the hero or heroine depicted, what is their story, what is the message, but then what particular star sign is represented. And then I would go into my birth chart and I would check, okay, are there any planets right now in my charts that are potentially activated in this particular area? So is there anything happening in Virgo right now, or anything happening in Aries right now, or anything happening in Taurus? Like, I'm an Aries sun, and during Aries season I literally got the Aries card so much. Like, this Achilles card was a stalker card for me for many readings. And so when you have this confirmation of like, okay, it's Aries season, you're an Aries and you're putting an Aries card, it just adds a nice confirmation. And if you're putting a card that has nothing to do with you, so for example, if I was putting a card and it was Libra, I don't have anything in Libra really happening in my birth chart. I don't really have any like planets or anything there. It's still, there's still a message there. It means that I need to draw meaning from Libra, that I need to fill the void, right? And take inspiration from that particular sign. I mean, Libra is opposite to Aries, so for me, I always have to take inspiration from them. Just ideas on how you could associate the astrological with the layers of your reading. I also particularly loved using this for timing. So for example, if I wanted to do something a little bit more predictive and I was like, okay, when is the best time to do this? Then you could use the timing here. So if you're having, for example, here in Sagittarius, then you know potentially it could be for Sagittarius this year, especially if you're doing a year ahead reading and you have different questions. When do I need to launch my business, or when is the best time for me to travel? Depending on when the different zodiac signs you pull, it could help you time, which is great. So that's for the astrological part. As someone like me who doesn't really do the decan and yet who's still astrology curious, I found that this had a lot to inform and a lot to give in terms of layers to my readings. Obviously, and the main thing for me, the most exciting, was the Greek mythology aspect, because it's a subject I'm very passionate about. I love working with those types of archetypes and stories, and I was very impressed at the variety of characters and beings that Letao chose. I loved the fact that we had also a good balance between more female and male characters. I loved that. That made it feel very balanced as an oracle deck. And obviously, like I was saying, the keywords are also very balanced, because for each of the sign we have 3 different keywords, and on average I found 2, like I was saying, more positive or neutral, and 1 a little bit more shadow. We had impatience for Aries, but sometimes being impatient is necessary, right? Sometimes you need to be impatient if you need to get something done. So just because a keyword could be considered a little bit more shadow, it really depends on the context of your reading and on the context of the situation. Speaking of context, truly, the guidebook in this sense is fantastic, and we're going to look at it after, because there was a lot of work done by the author to give you day-to-day practical example of readings that he has done for people, and it helps to give you context as to how or when someone could be pulling this card. And that for me was truly where the magic of this deck was, because we could think that working with Greek heroes and heroines, it's so far from our culture potentially, it's so far from our time, right? We're looking at old text, old stories. They can feel so remote and far away from our day-to-day questions about jobs and dates and, you know, day-to-day life. And yet, because the guidebook really gives you practical example, practical readings, it helped to bring those heroes and heroines to modern day, to day-to-day life, and it helped to bring their stories, and it helped me connect with, okay, how can I apply their stories to my life right now in my particular situation that I'm facing. So here we have Atalanta for Aquarius, and this is the last card of the different heroes. The last 4 cards, as I was mentioning, are the moon cycles. So we have 4 cards for the moon cycles, and this time we don't have heroes, but we do have mythological creature. So for Pegasus, we have assistance, and this is the new moon. So that's the one thing I would say. My only criticism about this deck that I have is that I got confused between the new moon and the full moon, purely from the way that it was drawn. So this is the new moon for Pegasus, and so for the full moon we have Medusa and we have Reflection, and this is in this deck the full moon, and this is the new moon. But for me, when I see that, this looks like a full moon and this looks like a new moon. It's a small graphic detail, and it's the only thing that I will say tripped me up using this deck. But honestly, I was just using the guidebook with it, and so it was completely fine. I got used to it, but literally that's the only one thing that tripped me up. So for Pegasus, for the new moon, we have assistance. Then we have the first quarter moon with the Sphinx for transition. Then we have our full moon with Medusa for reflection. And then we have our third quarter moon with the sirens and the keyword cleanse. So these are all the cards, and I wanted to leave mine mixed in because I've been using the deck. I wanted to share with you how I've been using it. And so the way I've been using it is by mixing all the cards in, and like I was saying, pulling a card for myself or for others. We've mentioned like either predictive reading or getting guidance. We've mentioned journaling. There's so many things you can do with this deck. There's obviously the other option of leaving things in order, as this is set up to follow the decans. Then you could leave this in order, like the 3 Aries and the 3 Taurus and the 3 Gemini, etc. And slowly across the year, pull the card of the timing that you're in, and you could work with the deck that way. Like I said, I'm really not someone who works with the decan. It's not something that I feel connected to. And so my preferred way was using it as a mixed oracle deck, to get inspiration for journaling, figure out which hero am I embodying right now, which one am I invited to embody, which also timing, like when is this gonna happen, when is the best time for me to do this, as well as getting a daily guidance. This was also great for daily guidance with the keywords and the guidebook. Okay, what do I need to reflect on today? What do I need to think about today? There's so many ways that you could read this deck. The way that for me I connected with it the most was truly to think about what archetype or what hero, what human being, what character do I need to connect with, or do I need to embody, or on the other hand, do I need to let go of? Maybe it's an aspect that is like too present in my life that I'm overly focusing on and that I need to potentially find balance in or put light on or something along those ways. So lots of different ways to use this deck, and I've really enjoyed using it in the last months. What, like I was saying, truly made it for me though was the guidebook, because honestly it is so great. I don't often get excited about guidebooks for oracle decks. I find that often the guidebooks for tarot decks are really well written, we get a lot of information, we get a lot of depth, and sometimes for oracles we don't always get the same effort, the same kind of amount of work and intention put through. This though really feels like a standout job, and I'm excited to share it with you. So let's have a look at the guidebook. So the guidebook is black and white. It's in this like type of magazine paper, you know, a little bit glossy, and the way that it is set out is that first you have a table of content, which we love because it helps you to see all the different cards per sign. So like I was saying, for Aries we had Theseus for leadership, Bellerophon for impatience, and Achilles for confidence. So great to have the breakdown here, makes finding the cards really easily. And reading the preface and the introduction, you understand really why this is a special deck, because in here Letao shares his passion for Greek mythology and how along the years he became more and more close to this particular practice, to this particular belief, to this particular like type of work. For example, in the preface he shares that every year he does a particular pilgrimage. He tries to go to Greece every year to kind of connect with the different temples, to connect with his energies. And I found that really inspiring and really moving, because it really shows that he cares about this subject and that this is something that he lives with, that he lives by it. These are not just heroes and stories that he tells, but it's also energies that he actively works with in his life, and I thought that was very moving. So in the guidebook we also have spreads. They're pretty regular. You have the 1 spread card, 2, 3 spread card. You have one dedicated for this deck, which is the spear, which is quite interesting. But honestly, I've not been doing a lot of big spreads with this deck. I found that 1 to 3 card was enough, because there's so much depth and richness within each stories, each heroes, that for me personally 1 to 3 card was enough to answer any questions I had, or for any journaling prompt I was doing, or even for any daily guidance. I found that I had plenty to chew on with just 1 to 3 cards. And after the spreads we move straight on to the different zodiac signs. So here we have Aries, the initiation of cosmic fire, and so we have the different heroes, about 4 to 5 pages for each of the card. So we get lots and lots to really get our teeth into. So for each of the card, you will have the name of the hero, in this case Bellerophon. You will have the keyword impatient, and then you will have a planet, the decan, whether it's the first decan of Aries, second decan of Aries, third decan of Aries, and then first decan of Taurus, second decan of Taurus, etc., for all 12 signs. You have the date of which that corresponds to the decan, so second decan of Aries is April 1st to April 10, and then you always have a crystal. Now I will say I'm not someone who walks the decan, I'm not someone who's very like engaged with working with the cards in that particular way, so I was not paying too much attention to that, but I enjoy that it's there because it means that it could be useful for timing. Like I was saying, it was useful sometimes if you really want to date something, you could pull a card and be like, okay, if I pull, for example, the Bellerophon card and I'm being asked when is a great time for me to launch a business, I could tell them, okay, between April 1st and April 10th could be a great time. So that's more how I work with the decans. I love the fact that there was different crystals. Let's look at Cancer, for example. For Cancer, we have Orpheus healing, it's linked with Emerald. We have Deanara with the Lapis Lazuli, and we have Althea with Moonstone, which are all stones that I would personally associate with Cancer. So I really appreciated and enjoyed the crystal links because I found that oftentimes they did match with my personal association with that I usually have between crystals and different zodiac signs. Then you have a little text around the decan, what it means in this particular time of the year, the energy, and then we move on to the myth. So for the myth, we always have at least 2 to 3 pages, and whilst that may not necessarily tell us everything about who this personal character is, it is definitely enough to get you started. I found that the way it was written was very beautiful, and I found that it was a great summary of the heroes and heroines. Sometimes in oracle decks based on myths, we literally get this much and we have to go and do our own research on Google and get more information. Here you definitely have enough to get information, and of course if then you want to read more you can, but this is great. I found that it was really a great summary every time of who this character is, what is their strengths, what is their story, do they have lovers or enemies, were they in the war. It just really good summary and plenty to get your brain going. And then we move on to the teaching, and this is where for me the magic of the oracle deck is. So for the teaching, which is the guidance, we have usually about 2 pages, and the way that this is written is truly written from a perspective of giving you daily examples about readings that Letao did with people. So when he read for this person, that happened. When he was asked about this situation, this card came up. It's real life example about real people that did ask questions. And this is where for me the magic of the deck was, because it gave me true grounded practical like anchor on how this particular hero or heroine can apply to our day-to-day concerns. So just because we're working with something that feels very ancient and that feels very powerful and that can feel very distant, I thought the guidebook did a great way of bringing the wisdom that we can get from those Greek myths into day-to-day life, and that was so great. I even enjoyed just taking the guidebook with me sometimes and do bibliomancy. So what I want to do now is I want to pull a card and we'll read what it has to say, just so you can get a glimpse as to how the oracle works, how you could potentially make it work for you. And so let's have a look. Okay, for whoever's watching right now, what do we need to know at this moment in time? Maybe we can ask for an anchor to help us navigate the week that we're in whenever you're watching this. What is the anchor, the energy that could help us at this moment in time? And we have Leto with anxiety, and the star sign associated is Virgo, I believe. Yeah, that's Virgo. So beautiful. Look at how beautiful this card is. This is what I was saying. A lot of the backgrounds, it really helps to give you a glimpse as to what the story is. So Leto is the mother of Artemis and Apollo. She was chased around the world because she was pregnant with 2 gods, and so she had to hide on an island. We see the island here. the island, which name escapes me right now, but she had to hide on an island to give birth, away from the prying eyes of the gods and goddesses who could be jealous of her, carrying very special babies who would become Apollo, the god of beauty and the arts, and Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and the wildness. So beautiful, beautiful card. And I want to have a look at the guidebook. Leto is linked to anxiety. So the decan is the second decan of Virgo. It's between September 1st and September 10th. And the crystal associated is selenite. For the myth, what you can do is you can pause right now and you can read, if you want, the actual myth. I just give you a very quick summary, but if you want to pause and read it for yourself so you can find out a little bit more who Leto is, then he will give you some ideas. And now what I want to read to you though is the teaching. Of course, you're welcome to pause if you don't want to hear me read in my forgive French accent, but for those of you who don't mind, let's read the guidance or the teaching for the card of Leto. Antonio was a healthy and fit client in his 50s. Recently, a very close friend of his passed away from colon cancer. During the session, Antonio told me that his friend was a vegetarian and always ate healthily and had a regular exercise routine, so his death came as a total shock to Antonio. Since then, Antonio was focusing on his health to such an extent that he got paranoid about anything that could be interpreted as a negative symptom. At the beginning, it was a small concern, but it had developed into a habit so that he was endlessly preoccupied with his feelings and worries about what the symptoms could mean. He felt that he was losing control of his mind due to his incessant tension. In the myth, Leto went through extreme anxiety and fear, not only for her own safety, but also for the safety of her unborn children. We can all resonate with this experience when we are feeling overwhelmed by the what-ifs. Fidgeting, shallow breaths, and unexplained pains can all be symptoms of anxiety. Leto received assistance from her sister Asteria, who had been transformed into the sacred island of Delos by Poseidon, where Leto could find peace and give birth to Apollo and Artemis. The image of the island of Delos floating in the middle of the ocean is a symbol of the universal flow of events, the wheel of fortune and the vehicle that carries us forwards in life. When Leto, the second decan of Virgo, appears in your reading, it is telling you that the universe is watching over everything you are going through. The divine plan has arranged for your own island, for your safety and prosperity. But we must know that the ocean is uncontrollable, so the best way to face your anxiety is to trust that the cosmic wave will drive you towards the haven you need now, instead of struggling and paddling in the middle of nowhere. I love that analogy, it's very good. Your situation will unfold properly regardless of how it seems in your mind. Trust the infinite and accept that all is well. So focus on the larger and spiritual vision of your life and let the higher power bring the right path forward to you. I recommended acceptance and commitment therapy for Antonio to slowly acknowledge that his anxiety could be a negative response to the sudden passing of his dear friend. We also drew up an action plan for him to better balance his chaotic feelings and restless thoughts by attending a meditation and mindfulness class. When I saw him again 3 months later, after our first course of counseling, he told me he finally found his peace, his equilibrium, and could move forward with his life freely. What a beautiful story. I love that. And you really get that for all the readings. So you constantly get like practical examples of how these cards came up from different people. And I found myself feeling very like endeared and, caring for what happened to those people that Letao was giving readings to. And it really helped me as well as a reader to connect with the energy of the different heroes or heroines I was pulling for that day. So for our reading, we get the idea that if we're going through an anxious time right now, we're feeling overwhelmed, then it is our job to ensure to maintain well-being, to ensure to keep a clarity of mind and to find our inner island where we can find rest, where we can find peace, and where we can also potentially birth something in the world, because maybe for some of you you've been anxious because there might be something you're ready to birth, and that's exciting, but it can also bring anxious feelings. So that's what I wanted to share with you today for the Oracle of the Mythic Heroes. It's a deck I've really been enjoying in lots of different ways. I am excited to continue using it. You'll definitely be seeing it in my future pick a card readings because I think there's so much power to work with those heroes. They can give us strength, they can give us inspiration, they can remind us that we too can face difficult things and rise. And so these are the kinds of energy that I think we can all gain from at this moment in time with what's going on in the world. I hope you enjoyed seeing this deck. Again, I want to say a huge thank you to the creator for sending this my way. Just want to say thank you so much for being here. So again, the links to where you can purchase this will be in the description box below. It's mass market. You should be able to find it on all the different like websites like Amazon or your local bookshops and wherever you guys shop for mass market decks. Until my next video, I'm sending you so much good vibes and keep navigating the waves of your soul. Bye!